Hey, look who's here. It's me, Bob Harris. How is everybody doing today? Time to get ready for the On the Hot Seat session. FootballDiehards.com, brought to you by us. If you're here on the YouTube channel, you know that. You were waiting for me. I'll give every people a chance to get caught up here and get logged in. Hit the like button if you like me. Hit the dislike button if you don't. Hit the subscribe button if you're not subscribed. All the YouTube-y things that we ask you to do, I am asking you to do. Do them now. Hello, Andrea. Nice of you to come stop by. We're going to look at a mock draft today, a way too early industry mock draft that I'm part of, and we'll get into that. We'll do some news and notes and have a little discussion in advance so people can show up and check it out. Always interesting to see how these drafts play out. Always interesting to see, kind of the decision I made. I did one earlier on our first mock draft Monday. Hello, James. Thanks for coming. On our radio program, the Football Diehards, a radio show on Sirius XM Fantasy Sports Radio, which I advise you all to listen to. It's great, I'm told. Many people say. We did a mock draft Monday. I was trying to see how closely this one followed along with it. If you were here for my way too early top 12, see how that kind of dovetails with this and not. We'll discuss that a little bit as well. Kind of interesting to see how it plays out and how people view players early this year. And also, it's a way too early mock, and so maybe some people are willing to take chances a little more than other people, or maybe you're more, or maybe I'm one of those people who's more willing to take chances because it's February. They haven't even played the Super Bowl. We don't know what the hell is going to happen with some of these guys. Some of these players that we're drafting are going to be on different teams. Some of them are going to have different teammates. Some of them, we don't even know who the coach is going to be yet. Andrea did a mock too, took Debo with the 12th pick overall. Interesting. I'm going to talk about Debo a little bit in this one because I might have some buyer's remorse for one of my plays. This draft was hosted by full-time fantasy Billy Muzio. Invited us in. It's great. Ooh, and then Henry, and you'll see it this one. There's some interesting values play out. This one went crazy wide receiver heavy early on, but let's hit some of the news here real quick because there are some items of interest. I'm told there will be a Super Bowl played this weekend. Congratulations to the Chiefs and Eagles for being there. If you've been watching your television, you see all the festivities and the shenanigans ongoing in Glendale, Arizona. The Eagles come in a 1.5-point favorite in this game. I think that's kind of understandable. In general, I think they're the better team. And then Patrick Mahomes. Who knows? He's kind of a wild card to me, a little X factor. So we'll see. Really good defense for the Eagles. Tough pass rushing unit. The Chiefs played defense better than I thought last week. On the injury report, they put out the injury report last Friday. I was looking for today's. It has not been posted yet. Sometimes they run a little late. Teams practice a little late, whatever. I haven't heard anything, exciting from there. Juju Smith-Schuster and Kadarius Toney, that guy, were both listed as questionable in the off-week injury report. Both of them are expected to play. Mecole Hardman will not play. He has been placed back on injured reserve. And Clyde Edwards-Helaire could play. He is activated from IR. Doesn't mean he'll be on the active roster. The Chiefs generally have 3 running backs active for a game. Ronald Jones also available. Melvin Gordon languishing on the practice squad. Not really happy about it. He talked a little bit this week at the Super Bowl. Everyone talks at the Super Bowl. Did anyone see Jake Plummer at the Super Bowl? I mean, he's got some kind of many of the comments had it right. He's like future Aaron Rodgers. Got the hair going, and he's in like a mushroom business. I'm guessing that's a certain kind of mushrooms that he's in. So just interesting seeing him talk about the Denver Broncos. Interesting look for him as well. Clearly enjoying the retired life. Looks, as Mike Kliss said, looks lean and healthy, and interesting. Looks like he's in your favorite band from the 70s. Anyway, so I bring that up because Aaron Rodgers is one of the news stories. He talked this week. Of course, everyone talks this week. He is not at the Super Bowl, though, that I've seen yet. But he did make his regular appearance on the Pat McAfee show and said he's going into a darkness retreat for 4 days. I believe that might involve some of Jake Plummer's product. But he has not yet decided if he's going to play in 2023. We hear a lot of things, right? There's been reporting that his agents, sourced through his agents, the Associated Press and Associated Press Insider reported this, that sources within Rodgers' agents office suggests that he'd prefer to play for the Raiders over the Jets, right? That's his order of preference. And it seems more and more like the Packers want to move on from him. They've had enough of this nonsense. And my nonsense, look, he's been a great player. I get it, but I think they're ready to move forward. I think the reporting has been their preference is to trade him. So we'll see what happens. Nobody knows at this point, right? The Jets have been mentioned because of his association with Nathaniel Hackett, Paul's son Nathaniel. It's getting bad when you're old enough to know who coaches' dads are, right? That dates me a little bit. Anyway, Nathaniel Hackett, who got, Aaron Rodgers loved him during his time in Green Bay. I'll just say, that's the most success Hackett has had as a coordinator came during his time with Rodgers in Green Bay. Also, Hackett wasn't the play caller during that time, so there's that. Anyway, so Aaron Rodgers, among the stories we'll be watching for going forward, the quarterback situation. He seems like the first domino that will fall or needs to fall, but there is another domino out there, kind of a standalone domino named Derek Carr. And the Raiders have given permission to the Saints to talk to Derek Carr. If you'll remember, Dennis Allen was the head coach of the Raiders for the first 2 years or year and a half of Derek Carr's career. Started him as a rookie, so maybe Carr feels some allegiance there. Seems odd to me that someone would give something up. I mean, unless it's like a really late round pick or something minimal. When if you just wait, the Raiders are obviously going to have to cut Derek Carr before his $40-some million in contract money is guaranteed. I believe that's on the 15th or somewhere around there. So, maybe they'll wait. Maybe they won't. Maybe it's just worth a 6th or 7th round pick or something late in the draft, maybe more than that, to not have to get in a bidding war. But if you had some kind of tacit agreement, why not? Why not say, okay, just wait till you're cut and we'll come cut that deal, right? But we'll see. Derek Carr will be one of the dominoes that fall at quarterback. Tom Brady's still retired. I think he's going to stay that way, but we'll see. Talk to Adam Hill from the Las Vegas Review-Journal on the Football Diehards radio program this past weekend, and he thinks Rodgers is the guy they'll target. The Raiders will target. And he mentioned last year that it was a thing, like this was not a made-up thing, that Tom Brady was his desire, that the Raiders made a push for Tom Brady. And that their pecking order of quarterbacks they wanted were Brady, Rodgers, Jimmy Garoppolo. It's fair to say that pecking order is unchanged just with Tom Brady out of the mix, right? So Rodgers, then Garoppolo. I think either of them would be fine for Davante Adams. One may be finer than the other, of course. So we'll see what goes on there. Also on the news front, Brock Purdy going to have his surgery. It sounds like the reporting today from NFL Network is he will have his elbow repaired. It'll be the internal brace, they call it, not the full Tommy John surgery. He should be ready to go. And according to Joe Montana, he should be the damn starter. And I don't think that's breaking news there. I think he will be the starter as long as he's healthy. And the belief is he will be ready for the start of training camp. So Sam Howell, the likely starter for the Washington Commanders to open the season. Interesting there. Ron Rivera kind of came out and said he gets first shot. Howell had one good game or decent game. Wasn't a super high-end game, but it was a win over the Dallas Cowboys, and that matters in Washington. So that's something we'll be watching for. It won't be Carson Wentz. Saquon, news on the running back front. Tony Pauline from the Pro Football Network spent time at the Senior Bowl because he's a draftnik guy, and all the player agents and executives are there, and he's talked to any number of them. Tony Pauline, really sharp dude, really good source, has good info, good contacts. He talked about Saquon Barkley likely getting a deal done before the start of free agency, so they don't have to worry about tagging him. Talked about Josh Jacobs likely getting tagged because it doesn't seem like the Raiders will be getting a deal done with him in advance of free agency. We'll see how he feels about that. He has said he wants to remain a Raider, so assuming that's the case, there shouldn't be a big deal. Tony Pollard also likely to get the franchise tag from the Dallas Cowboys, and Ezekiel Elliott likely to take a pay cut to remain with the Cowboys. So status quo in that backfield, which would be interesting, right? I think the values will swap out this year. We'll see that probably in this very mock draft, how that plays out and how people view or how people right now are viewing Tony Pollard. Remember, he broke his fibula against the 49ers. So he's got to recover, but he does seem to be the lead piece now, and I'm interested to see how much of a discount we get on Zeke, who wasn't, horrible. I mean, it wasn't like vintage Zeke, but given the price you were paying, I can remember third, fourth round, it wasn't like the worst possible outcome for him. I wanted to just look and see what the final numbers were for Ezekiel Elliott. Finishes running back 21, generally speaking, which is maybe slightly ahead of where you were drafting him last year, or right in the range you were drafting him to be running back 2. I think that's pretty reasonable. So there we have it. There's some news and notes and information to get your whistle wet, or however you do that at the bar. Again, if you're just tuning in, we'll dive into this mock draft here momentarily. I am Bob Harris, senior editor at footballdiehards.com. I'm a Fantasy Sports Writing Hall of Famer. You can hear me on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio. Right now, 4 days a week. You'll hear me again Thursday night at 10, Friday at 10. By the way, Thursday at 10, I'm going to do some more rankings, so check that out. Friday, we'll have Chris Allen from Football Guys and many other sites on. Saturday, we'll have a couple hours. We'll be on 7 to 9 on Saturday. Then Sunday, Super Bowl pregame show, 3 to 6 p.m. Eastern time. It'll be me and Mike Dempsey. So be sure to tune in for that. Then Monday night on Sirius, it's like an endless thing here. We'll be back Monday night for another way too early mock draft, much like this one. This one will feature the hosts from Sirius. It'll be a 10-team draft. I'll be taking part in that one as well and hosting along with Mike Dempsey. So check it out. I'll be back here on Saturday as well for a live stream at noon Eastern time. So mark your emails if you're a subscriber. If you're not a subscriber, go to footballdiehards.com and become a subscriber. It's a great thing. There we go. Sorry I froze up there, kids. Can't explain that. So let me run through the rundown again. I don't know where I froze up. I'm first pick. Matt Kelly from Player Profiler is next. Pat Fitzmaurice from Fantasy Pros third. Jeudy Smith, Full-Time Fantasy, is fourth. Curtis Patrick from RotoViz fifth, followed by RotoWire. Jim Coventry is playing there. Full-Time Fantasy, Billy Muzio, who put this draft together. Thanks to him. Jared Smola from Draft Sharks drafting next, followed by Howard Bender from Fantasy Alarm. Jeff Ratcliffe, Fade the Noise. Dave Richard from CBS, and Bob Lung from Big Guy Fantasy. So a pretty good group of drafters. So there's some interesting picks here. I started out, if you watched my way too early top 12, you know I have Christian McCaffrey at the top of my list. And I mentioned in that show, and if you haven't seen it, go back into the Football Diehards YouTube channel. Just a week ago today, I did the first of the too early, way too early rankings, my top 12. It was Christian McCaffrey at the top of that list, and there were 6 guys, I think, at the top. My first 6 guys, I think any of them, or at various times, all of them will be my first pick overall, and all of them are pretty much in the, a couple surprises here. Especially a surprise in the middle of the first round. So we'll get into that. But I went with Christian McCaffrey. Think it's a totally defensible pick, assuming, looking at the workload, looking at the improvement to the 49ers offense after he was traded from week 7, they went from the 19th scoring offense to the 4th or the second best scoring offense, 4th in overall yardage from 18th in overall yardage. Just a much better offense. Kyle Shanahan, they made the play for him for a reason. Kyle Shanahan will make the great use of him. I think it's a totally defensible play. You'll see here and the rest of my top 6, the guys that I think all of whom are worthy of consideration. It's McCaffrey, Eckler, Cooper Kupp, Travis Kelce, Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase. You see some names not included in that list in the top 12 here, or top 6 here. We'll get through that here momentarily. But I think any of those guys, at points, you could make a case for them being the first pick overall. Justin Jefferson on that list, taken by Matt Kelly. not a huge surprise here. Here's my, look, we saw the high end, right? He was phenomenal last year and set another career high in catches on 128 catches. There were weeks where he was shut down, though, especially important weeks late in the season. And you wonder if that isn't going to be a blueprint that other teams work from over the offseason. I mean, and we're splitting hairs here. Do I think he's not going to be a super high-end producer? I do not. If I'm deciding between him and McCaffrey or him and Eckler, or in my case, I like Cooper Kupp better. I thought Cooper Kupp, while he was healthy and on the field, was a way more consistent high-end producer, right? So, I mean, again, we're splitting hairs at the top of this draft. And one thing I want to just remind everybody, what are we doing in the first round? We're drafting everyone at their ceiling, right? There's no, I'm drafting him and hope he does okay. You're drafting these players at their ceiling. That's why you're often disappointed by your first round pick, because they don't always hit their ceiling, right? Says Jonathan Taylor. That is correct, Jonathan Taylor. They do not always hit their ceiling. How much time? James Furry wants to know, and this is regard to McCaffrey, and something I think is a fair question. Elijah Mitchell or whoever, right? Whether it's Jordan Mason at some point, Tyrion Davis-Price, somebody, and so I guess for me, looking at the model from this year, Christian McCaffrey had some really good games and games that Elijah Mitchell showed up in. I think this is not, something that takes away from McCaffrey. I think there's a sufficient role for him to get that high-end production, and Elijah Mitchell or whoever that second running back is, and I do think it'll be Mitchell. I'm just kind of making the case here that I don't really worry about who it is. Mitchell's pretty good. He will have a role, may score some points. I think if you're, I'm hoping that scares people off McCaffrey and I get value on him. I don't think I will. I haven't seen him, that in the early mock drafts I've been in, he's gone pretty quickly. I want to say in the way too early, or the first mock draft Monday, he went second overall. That was me, Mike Dempsey, Jamie Calandro, and Eric Romoff. Eric Romoff took him second overall. And I think you're going to see that pretty consistently. Would be more than this year. And again, I think this is more of an additive situation than something that takes away from Christian McCaffrey. Justin Jefferson second, Jamar Chase number 3. So I have Jamar. I think I've locked up again. Damn it. All right. I don't know why I'm freezing up. All right. Pardon my swearing when I freeze up. Anyway, so, Jamar Chase, third overall, seems pretty reasonable. Again, the thing I liked about Jamar Chase was the way he showed up at the end of the season, right? Came back from the injury, and down that stretch, teams adjusted and seemed to be determined to keep him from making the huge plays. So what did Zach Taylor do? He adjusted and made sure that he was very busy. Used him in underneath routes, over the middle, and hoped that he could make some plays. And he did make some plays, but it was that target share went way up. So look, I think T. Higgins will stick around, but there's been talk that if T. Higgins wants a huge contract, maybe they move on from him. I think either way, I do think this is another case where probably Chase is better with Higgins working opposite him, but I think they'll cobble together. Trenton Irwin, do your best T. Higgins impersonation. I don't know. We'll see. But I like Chase an awful lot. In Dynasty, I would like Chase over Jefferson myself. I know not everyone would, but I feel like the quarterback situation over the course of the rest of the season looks pretty over the next number of years, let's say the next 5 years, looks a little more positive, or at least a little more certain than Justin Jefferson. Both super high-end talents. 4th pick overall, Cooper Kupp. I'm not going to complain about this one. Remember, Cooper Kupp was hurt I want to say in week 10. He still finished the season as the Rams leading receiver. The Lambs, was that a Freudian slip there? He still finished the season as the Rams leading receiver, leader in receiving yardage, touchdowns, all those things. I think targets was the only category that he didn't lead. Tyler Higbee edged him out in 8 games, right? Okay. Cooper Kupp. And I think this would have been different for me. I mentioned this in the top 12 video. That probably this would be different for me if Sean McVay didn't come back. I do think, look, you want to have a quarterback. Matthew Stafford is a pretty damn good quarterback when he's in the locked and upright position. I try to be injury agnostic and not worry, but he's getting to the point where you're a little worried about him. I still think, I'm going to work under the assumption he'll be on the field. Next up is my 2nd pick overall, Austin Eckler. I may make adjustments there. It's way too early, top 12. is a starting point. I will be working it, and a lot of the rankings as I work through my rankings will be resolved by how these mock drafts play out. The way too early mock drafts, I don't put as much stock in because I think people are trying to plant flags and kind of make their case, right? You're trying to like come out of the gate and say these are the guys that I'm in on. It's almost like you're sending messages because there are a lot of things we don't know that are going to happen. But I think Jeudy Smith picking Cooper Kupp there makes perfect sense. And that left Curtis Patrick with Austin Eckler, who I think is a great play, man. 107 catches last year. The touchdowns were the difference, right? I was pretty sure there was going to be touchdown regression. Austin Eckler did not think there would be touchdown regression, or at least there was a touchdown regression. There was actually an additional touchdown. That was unusual. I'll remind you, he ran for 12 touchdowns, last season. That was 9 more than his previous high. He had 3 rushing touchdowns in his past. This year he did it again, except more, 13 touchdowns. So great role in offense. I know Kellen Moore is now the offensive coordinator there. He'd like you to believe that Joshua Kelly is a player he thinks needs more playing time. Maybe he does. You've been around there a little while. Maybe it's Isaiah Spiller, who, if you will recall, was the number 3 rookie last year on most every ranking I saw. If you saw something different, let me know. But maybe Isaiah Spiller suddenly snaps to life. They would like somebody to join Austin Eckler. None of those players. Hello, Wendy. Thanks for coming. By the way, if you all have questions about anything you're seeing there or hearing here, please jump in. I would love to hear your feedback. And if you hit the like button, I would like that. If you hit the do not like button, I'm going to hit the thumbs down just so somebody does it. I'll break the ice. And also hit the subscription button. If you're not subscribed, subscribe. This channel is great. We do all kinds of stuff. I'll be here twice a week, every week. Good evening, Albert. Thanks for coming. Appreciate the time and the visit here. We are kind of rolling through a way too early mock draft here that's put on by Full Time Fantasy with a handful of industry heavyweights here. Jim Coventry. This is, I think, interesting and also, I think, defensible here going in early on Davante Adams. I was surprised also that Spiller didn't play more, given his high end. TT Warrior is kind of with me. I mean, he was, again, you get Breece Hall. I mean, you had Breece Hall and Kenneth Walker were universally the top 2. And, I mean, I don't know. Did anyone else see anywhere Spiller wasn't the 3rd-ranked rookie running back? I did not see that. Anyway, he shows up in Los Angeles and couldn't get it done. That's 3 times. Now, 3 straight drafts the Rams have swung and missed, or so far missed on rookie running backs. Joshua Kelly being the first one, Larry Roundtree the 3rd, although I don't think anyone had high expectations for him. He was a much later pick. And then last year, Isaiah Spiller. So they're looking for that Melvin Gordon-like piece. I know where that piece is. He's on the practice squad of the Kansas City Chiefs, and none too damn happy about it. But whatever the case, it's worked out well for Austin Eckler. Davante Adams, 115 catches, 1,500 yards for the 2nd consecutive season, playing mostly with Derek Carr. Had a great game with Jarrett Stidham, too. We're all hoping that he has a good quarterback this season. As I mentioned, I think the pecking order that was thrown out to me by Adam Hill of the Las Vegas Review-Journal on the Football Diehards program over the weekend, if you hold to that, I said last year, he said they wanted Brady, Rodgers, and Garoppolo in that order. Brady's no longer in the mix, so it's Rodgers or Garoppolo. I mean, if they go after either of those 2 and landed one of them, great news for Davante Adams, I think. So, and Davante Adams is a very good player. CeeDee Lamb by Billy Musio. This is an interesting pick. People went all in on Lamb last year. I think he was like, I saw him go as high. I know Mike Dempsey, my co-host on Sirius, was really high on him and liked him as wide receiver 4. And I saw a lot of drafts where he was going late 1st round all the way through middle of the 2nd round, right? Here he is, middle of the 1st round. Not bad. Pick 1-7, CeeDee Lamb. Expecting him to continue to be pretty solid play. I thought that the interesting thing about him, he was pretty solid all season long, but finished strong with Dak as his quarterback. I want to see the average points per game. We're a little bit off for him. I want to say CeeDee Lamb, 15. I'm using a generic scoring system. We use it Sirius for the host leagues. 15 points per game, relatively speaking, compared to, let's say, the top of the list. Cooper Kupp at 18.6, Justin Jefferson 18.1. Adams 17.1, so that gives you a little relative value there. CeeDee Lamb was right up there, and so look, again, they don't. I think they need more help in this receiving core. I would like to see them get more help in this receiving core. More speed, maybe DJ Chark speed. That would be great. But they definitely need another piece, and I think they'll work on it. Or maybe Michael Gallup will get better, right? Coming off the injury last year, dealt with some things, I guess, during the season. But none of the other pieces really came into threat. The next guy is a guy I would have picked ahead of a handful of these guys. Tyreek Hill. Huge season. Career best catches, yardage, targets, everything. Andrea, by the way, is worried about Lamb with a new offensive coordinator. Well, Mike McCarthy's going to be calling the plays, so I'm not like totally worried. McCarthy's had pretty good success with decent quarterbacks, but it is a concern, right? I mean, anytime you have some kind of change, it sows some doubts, right? So I think the big concern for me is Dak Prescott. Quit throwing it to the other team. They've got to get his interception problem figured out. I'm sure that's a big deal. Brian Schottenheimer, too, resurrecting him as the offensive coordinator. He'll have input into game planning, etc. But again, Mike McCarthy, the head coach, will be the play caller here. Worked out pretty well for the Packers when he did that, for the most part, until people thought he was just kind of checking in or checked out, whatever. But he didn't. He's won a Super Bowl in that Jerry Stadium way more recently than the Cowboys have won one, I'll tell you that. But Tyreek Hill, I think, was great. The thing that I like about Tyreek Hill was he got all his work done regardless of the quarterbacks, right? It didn't matter who his quarterback was. It wasn't always Tua Tagovailoa. Sometimes it was Skylar Thompson. Sometimes it was Teddy Bridgewater. Not very much. Still, as I mentioned, 119 catches, 170 targets, 1,710 receiving yards, totaled 8 touchdowns. Look, he's a playmaking standalone piece, right? I don't care who the quarterback is. I think he's a great play here. I'd be more worried about the quarterback situation for one Jalen Waddle. As you can see, he went in the middle of the second round with pick 2-6, also to Billy Muzio. So A.J. Brown, I thought, was a little surprising, right? To me, look, Brown was great. So was Devontae Smith. I thought Smith came on, especially down the stretch, but both of them had huge games at times. And if you think this is an offense that's, pretty well locked in with a solid production going forward, I feel pretty comfortable. I would like to get Brown later. Charles Davis, do I disregard injury for players coming off Achilles or ACL injuries the previous season? For example, Breece Hall, Javonte Williams, or Kyler Murray this upcoming season? This is a great question. So if we look here, Breece Hall went at 210. I took Breece Hall in the Monday night mock draft we did, the way too early mock draft, right about the same spot. I think that's fair. But it's also worth noting, let's say, talk about guys like J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards, the Baltimore Ravens. Both of them suffered ACLs the last week of August for Dobbins and a little bit later for Edwards. Edwards was a little more complicated, wasn't just a clean ACL. I think there were other things involved. I believe Dobbins was. And he still had to have that thing cleaned up. So, look, medical technology's come a long way. I think we all assume that it's kind of that 9-month timetable that guys come back. Oh, look, a pick just was made. Lamar Jackson after Daniel Jones. We'll get some of these interesting picks here. But, yes, it is something that I think you need to be mindful of. Breece Hall was phenomenal. It's a pretty narrow band, but I'm pretty confident in his ability. We'll see who their quarterback is there. I don't think it matters. Don't think the play caller, the change in play caller is like a huge worry for me. It's a similar offense. It'll be a West Coast style offense. So I'm okay with this, but I am kind of mindful of it. And the same with Williams, right? And I think his is a bad tear with multiple issues. So was Kyler Murray. I think he had to wait for his MCL to heal. And that's the thing. If there's MCL damage, they usually let the MCL heal before they do the surgery on the ACL, so that they can hit the ground running when they start their rehab. They want them to be able to rehab right away after the ACL. But yeah, and I think the Cardinals are pretty much, have been pretty open, or at least the people who cover the team closely, that nobody expects Murray to be ready for the start of the season. So I'm looking to cash in on value in those cases. You're not getting it with Breece Hall. People are all in on that. Williams, going a little later, I think, in most of the drafts I've seen. Where'd he go here? Yeah. Why don't I see him? I think I remember. Is he not gone yet? I got to look. I think he's not gone. I think people maybe dial back, and that maybe have something to do with the level of concern over his Yeah, he has not gone yet. We're into the sixth round. He has not gone. Javonte Williams has not gone. And I would probably take him ahead of Alvin Kamara. I'll tell you that. I'm worried about Kamara missing time due to his off-field issues. But yeah, I think one of the reasons why Williams is a little bit farther off the radar is the concern that his was a pretty complicated injury. So yes, Charles, the answer is I don't disregard. I'm paying some attention to it, but I think in Breece Hall's case, people are way optimistic, right? I think, and maybe overly optimistic. So don't disregard it, but watch how your league's playing out. I think Breece Hall. Is this an unreasonable gamble? No. I think we were getting a better discount on guys like Dobbins last year, and again, he came back, had to have more of a cleanup. We saw it with Edwards; he wasn't available the first 6 weeks, so I don't want to overstate the case. But obviously, people, including me, have not dialed back in the draft. But it is something that should not be totally disregarded, Charles. Going through Saquon Barkley, another member of my top 12, too early top 12. Travis Kelce is number 4 on my list. I think you could make an argument for him, and Mike Dempsey will on the Football Diehards radio program often. You could take him number 1 overall. And I probably will in some best balls at some point, just because he gives you such leverage over the field. And by leverage over the field, I mean he is better than everybody at his position. And you can look at the average points per game to ascertain that. Last year in the scoring system I'm using, and we'll just, whether you use the same system or not, relatively speaking, you're using a similar system, I'm sure, or some system with his PPR league. He averaged in the league I'm talking about 15.6 points per game. The next tight end on that list, TJ Hawkinson, 10.6. That makes Travis Kelce a player and a half. That's leverage over the field, people. That gives you the best guy. And I don't see any reason to believe he's going to slow down. And the people I talk to who cover the team closely on a daily basis don't see that. It could happen. I don't think like running backs, tight ends fall off the cliff. We've seen other tight ends play well into their later years, says Tony Gonzalez, and be very effective. I think it's you don't take as much abuse, especially these kind of receiving tight ends that aren't in the inline blocking type. So I'm pretty confident in Travis Kelce. Then Stephon Diggs, I think this is the ideal spot for him. In fact, if I'm drafting in the 12 spot, Bob Lung, credit to him. I did the same thing in our first mock draft Monday. If we went back to that, I went Stephon Diggs at 12 and Amon-Ra St. Brown at 13. I think it's a great combo. Or I went Tyreek Hill at St. Brown. But I think St. Brown at that second pick, if you take a receiver first overall, is a great play. I liked him with Tyreek Hill because it kind of gives you the yin and the yang, right? You have the big, explosive playmaking threat that maybe doesn't show up every week in Hill, and you need to kind of even that out with a super high-end producer, week-to-week producer in St. Brown. I think St. Brown's locked himself into that kind of role. Talked to Dave Burkett of the Detroit Free Press this week. Talked to Tim Twentyman. I talked to Burkett on Monday or Tuesday, I want to say. Tuesday, while I was on Fantasy Dirt hosting with Fabiano. Talked to Tim Twentyman from the team's official website. Both of them think that the role is pretty secure for Amon-Ra St. Brown, even with Jameson Williams back on the rise. Could Jameson Williams be the wide receiver 1 there? Yes. He'll certainly be the deep threat, but Amon-Ra St. Brown's role is not going away, that slot role, and maybe even more of an additive effect with Jameson Williams back. Jonathan Taylor, you're getting a discount. You should get a discount. He did not deliver last year. Was it all Jonathan Taylor's fault? I don't know. Offensive line played poorly. The quarterback play was an issue for the offense in general, not just Jonathan Taylor, but I think that offensive line was super disappointing. And Jonathan Taylor, he had started off great guns and then slowed down. Then he got beat up and it was a struggle. He's had the ankle surgery, expecting a rebound. Look, you're getting great discount from the number 1 pick overall price tag you were paying last year. And obviously, Dave Richards, pretty confident here. I mean, I think this is a solid play. Kelce and Jonathan Taylor, 2 guys that I think could easily wind up as top. Travis Kelce is the top at his position. I think Taylor could end up as a top 10. Drafting him as a running back 4. And that's the thing about this draft was I thought the running backs first round, you've only got 3 running backs coming off. This is a shift, people, and this is a shift I've been talking about and you'll hear other people talk about. We're kind of following the pattern of the NFL, who are putting more investment into the receiving core, right? The passing attack. Who do they pay? They pay quarterbacks. Who else do they pay? They pay wide receivers. Who don't they pay? Running backs. I mean, this is more than a trend, right? And we see running backs being used in different ways. Christian McCaffrey, Yeah, Andrea, no coach yet for the Colts, and they don't seem to be in any hurry. Also, no coach for the Cardinals. They are also not in a hurry. Expect no move on the Cardinals till after the Super Bowl. Jim Irsay tweeted this week that it might be a few more days. They're not going to rush it. And then maybe an assistant on one of the Super Bowl teams, right? Shane Steichen's been pretty popular. The offensive coordinator of the Eagles, Eric Bieniemy's been mentioned more as offensive coordinator and not as a head coach. But we'll see. But yeah, definitely no coach yet for the Colts. And so we don't totally know what the approach is. I think it will include Jonathan Taylor and hopefully the ankle cleanup. He talked about it after it happened and said, his ankle was a mess. They cleaned a lot of junk out of it aside from the injury. So hopefully he comes back healthy. But their offensive line needs to improve. I think this next pick here by Jeff Ratcliffe is interesting. DK Metcalf. I was kind of somehow in my mind, I had entertained some kind of fantasy that he was going to make it down to me. He did not. And look, Geno Smith delivered, right? And this is a reminder to me of something, and you may have heard me mention it on these live streams before, but receiving assets with questions at quarterback, we tend to dial way back, maybe too far back. I think we did that with DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett last year, who were going way later. We also did it with Amari Cooper. We're going to have an Amari Cooper conversation here in a minute. You saw I drafted him around 3. Don't know that's my favorite pick. Anyway, Travis Etienne and wow, Bichon Robinson, the rookie, going to Jared Smola from DraftSparks. I think we're all getting a little more in tune with. Again, I use we all, and I mean me all. Definitely with the rookie receivers. I generally, I just figure I'll let other people be the hero, and if they come up big, I'll let them come up big on another team. I'm not as much doing that, right? I'm old, but I'm easy to teach new tricks. And the rookie receivers come in more pro-ready than ever, right? When I first started playing fantasy, it wasn't, they talk about the third-year breakout. Hell, it didn't usually happen even in the third year. It was way after that. So now rookies come in and they're productive right away. That's also true of running backs. And Bichon Robinson kind of talked about as a generational kind of play at the position. I think there's, I guess I saw one ranking out there. Let me see if I can find it. Who was it? Was it CBS? I want to say, let me look real quick. It has Jahmyr Gibbs ahead of him. I think that's crazy. I think most people think that's crazy. But Bichon Robinson, from Texas, great pick, viewed as a generational talent. So I think, this is a defensible pick. I don't know that I would have made it that early, but so let me just restate. I would not have picked him ahead of Derrick Henry. I would have picked Derrick Henry ahead of Travis Etienne, Jonathan Taylor, right after Saquon Barkley. But anyway, it's a different story. Travis Etienne, quickly. Workload's going to be there. When are they going to start throwing the football? He needs a little more receiving equity for me to be this high end of play. Maybe he gets it. Bender might know more about this than I do. But they just didn't target him as heavily as I expected. Just didn't see it. Didn't see the target. Saw the workload. See the high-end playmaking ability. Like a lot about him, but like a lot about that offense. But I'm not sure I would be drafting him this high. We'll see. Upside is there. Jalen Waddle, a little less concerned. I don't know if he's as quarterback-proof as Tyreek Hill. So I'm hoping Tua Tagovailoa, like the Miami Dolphins say he will be, locked in as their starter. He is out of the concussion protocol. There's good news there. Look, if Tua Tagovailoa is the quarterback for the majority of the Dolphins games next year, I think this is a great pick. If he's not, I'd be a little worried. T. Higgins, maybe he's on another team, maybe not. I'm a little concerned, and Jim Coventry, is familiar with this as well, I'm sure. But, the target shares went way down, right? Towards the end of the season when we saw the usage of that went more to Jamar Chase. The Bengals made an adjustment and made heavier use of Jamar Chase in the underneath routes. But Higgins is always going to be a big playmaking threat. Garrett Wilson, wish I knew who his quarterback was, but I think this is, again, a defensible. I like some of the guys that went after him better or more. In fact, a handful of the guys that went in the next round, I probably would have preferred to Garrett Wilson. Maybe just because I don't know the quarterback. Maybe if I knew the quarterback was going to be like a Mike White-style quarterback who seemed to maximize Garrett Wilson's abilities, I'd be really happy. Garrett Wilson's a very good player. Defensible pick. Derrick Henry here, I think, is a screaming value. Like, I know, he's 29 years old. So offensive line isn't great. There's a new offensive coordinator. The passing attack has nothing to write home about. I didn't see last year any sign that Derrick Henry it doesn't still have that breakaway playmaking ability. And until I see that, I'm pretty happy continuing to play him or to continue to draft him. And again, I mean, to me, this is a great value. I hope I find him this late in drafts, but I don't think I will. I think this seems to be a draft where the receiving assets, I think people are trying to make the point that I was talking about, how we're going to be investing more heavily in receiving assets. And there are still running backs that are not drafted yet that are going to be fantastic, right? Breece Hall, as we talked about before with Charles' question. I mean, if he hadn't been hurt, I think he probably would have ended up being easily a top 10. He was on super pace. So Chris Godwin, this one is interesting from Matt Kelly. I think Chris Godwin's a great player. I don't know that he's in a great offense. I don't know that he's going to have a great quarterback. So I mentioned earlier, I don't want to overstate it or I don't want to overplay the fact that there are questions at quarterbacks. Good players play well. I just didn't like the offense last year. Maybe the offensive line improves. Maybe they find a serviceable quarterback. Every team in the NFC South needs a quarterback, by the way. Devontae Smith, very happy with this pick. Me, Bob Harris. That's my pick. Super happy. And not super happy with my next pick. Amari Cooper. I was struggling here. I don't want to take a quarterback this early. I wanted to take a quarterback early. I did not want to take one this early. I wanted to push that whole notion that I think receiving assets are more important than running back assets. Are running backs here that I would have rather had. Not necessarily Kenneth Walker III, who went off after me, but maybe Josh Jacobs. Yes. Nick Chubb. Yes. After that, probably might have had. I probably would have rather had Deebo Samuel, and I should have picked Deebo Samuel with this pick, and I regret that. But there isn't. It's not like Cooper doesn't have upside, right? We're hoping his quarterback play is better. He was pretty productive last year. He was another guy who fell way off the radar, right? Just because we didn't know what the quarterback situation was going to be, and we had great concerns about it. His average scores per game, I want to say 12.5 points per game on the relative scale of Cooper Kupp at 18 being the best, 18.6. Cooper finished well ahead of Devontae Smith, or tied with Devontae Smith. So maybe I had two value plays there. Christian Kirk ahead of them, ahead of T. Higgins, ahead of Chris Godwin, ahead of Terry McLaurin and Jerry Jeudy, ahead of Mike Williams. So ahead of DK Metcalf. So some of the guys drafted ahead of him, he's outscored. So hoping there's better quarterback play. I might be just disappointed in my own pick of this. Yeah, I don't have him as running back 4, but he was drafted as running back 4, and I agree with you. That is totally interesting, Hank. And it's not where I would draft him. I don't know that I'll have ETN in my top 24 at all. So, ranking. So I was surprised he went this early. I mentioned it a few minutes ago in case you missed it. I mean, I think the rushing role is there, right? And his big playability is there. But this is a pass-heavy team, or maybe even a pass-first team. And he didn't have that receiving equity. And it's odd, I thought, given that, when he was drafted, granted by coaching staff that didn't know what it was doing. But they drafted him and sold it as that he was going to be a chess piece, right? A receiving asset as much as a running back, a guy they were going to split out and use in different ways. So I thought it was an interesting pick too. Howard Bender's a sharp cookie, so I'm not going to question what he's thinking. If you're chasing volume, though, who else is there to cut into ETN's workload? So I think in that regard, I understand it, and I'm hoping maybe he develops into more of a receiving role. Definitely has the breakaway ability. We just didn't see it as much because they don't give him the ball in space as much. So that's my concerns with him. So I'm with you, Hank. It's interesting. So Cooper, Kenneth Walker. I mean, you can make the case once Pete Carroll, has his running back, that guy's going to be very good and very busy. And Kenneth Walker showed huge upside. And down the stretch, he had those huge games, right? In terms of carries, in terms of workload and scoring. I want to say he had, well over 25 range of carries down when the games mattered most. And when he gets those carries, he does a lot with them. And he's a huge breakaway threat, as we saw when he first started playing. So this is a defensible pick. I would have taken Josh Jacobs ahead of him. I would have taken Nick Chubb ahead of him. Me. Chris Olave, I think this is a solid play, especially if they get a good quarterback. We don't know who the quarterback's going to be, though, and we don't know that Michael Thomas is or isn't going to be back. I think he's going to be back. They're planning for him to be back. Can he stay on the field? Can he return? I mean, this is not your 2019 edition of Michael Thomas, no matter what. Chris Olave seems to be an ascending talent, so defensible there. Deebo Samuel, look, it wasn't as great a year as he had the year before, but it was a pretty damn good year. I think Christian McCaffrey is a bit of a limiting factor on him because I think they use him in a variety of ways. Some of those ways that, maybe limit the ways they use Deebo Samuel, but Deebo Samuel, a huge playmaking threat. Love Josh Jacobs. He is in my top 12, down at the tail end. I want to say number 10, I believe I have him at, number 10 or 11. God, I have to look. That's crazy. But I think great play no matter what. At this spot, I think he's a great value. Yeah, I have a number 11 just ahead of Stephon Diggs. So I'm assuming Josh Jacobs will be back, that they will franchise him. The Raiders will franchise him. Nick Chubb doesn't give you much as a receiver, but gives you a hell of a lot as a runner. And look, even with Deshaun Watson and my guy Amari Cooper, my disappointing guy, Kevin Stefanski is a run-first guy. I remember reading an article by, I think it was Dan Levy of the Cleveland Plain Dealer. The Browns use the run to set up the run. I mean, the Browns, everything starts with the run. And I don't think that necessarily changes. I don't think it's like a limiting, I don't think, limits the passing game. I think they could still make great, be a great downfield threat kind of team with Donovan Peoples-Jones and Amari Cooper. They've got David Njoku and also obviously Deshaun Watson, but they're going to be run first. Parker wants to know, why on earth did Jacobs fall so far? He did have a great season, right? And, again, in hindsight, where I took Amari Cooper, I would have much rather have Josh Jacobs. I would have rather had Nick Chubb. I would have rather had Deebo Samuel. But that's regrets in the past. I talked myself into Cooper in the moment. But I'm with you. I think Jacobs fell. As I mentioned, I have him at number 11 in my top 12. There's something to be said for not drafting last year's best team and trying to project going forward. But if you're working under the assumption, Parker, that he's going to be a Raider, and I am, because I think they're going to franchise tag him, I mean, especially if they franchise tag him and he's just there for a year, right? They don't have any investment beyond that. Why would they not continue to run the wheels off him? I mean, we don't know who the quarterback's going to be. Maybe that'll be a kind of a determining factor, or at least a part of the factor in the usage. But like, would they throw a ton more, with a different quarterback? I mean, I thought they threw a fair amount. Davante Adams would say they threw a hell of a lot. They do have some more pieces there, though. And Darren Waller, maybe he could stay healthy, and maybe Hunter Renfrow continue. Hunter who? It's been a little bit of a rough stretch for Hunter Renfrow. But I'm with you, Parker. I don't know why he fell so far. I can only say that in hindsight, I wish he had not fallen so far. Ramondre Stevenson, a little bit of concern for me, but I think the assumption is, and look, he finished well last year, right? I think this is kind of, drafting a guy, an asset that played about to this level last year. Let me just take a look at where Stevenson finished. Running back 15 in general. Some of the guys that went ahead of him probably aren't, Dalvin Cook, Jamal Williams. I think people are still going to remain skeptical of that, so that's understandable. I'm not as keen on, look, maybe this offense will be a lot better. Bill O'Brien comes in as the offensive coordinator. They did not have one of those last year. They had a defensive coach named Matt Patricia as their offensive coordinator, so probably wasn't ideal. So maybe there was some upside. I think Stevenson's a great playmaker. Mike Williams, we'll see. There's some talk that Keenan Allen will be gone, right? Daniel Popper from The Athletic reported this week that Keenan Allen could be a cap casualty. I don't know if that helps Mike Williams. Right, they have some other good assets there. Certainly, why am I spacing the name? Joshua. That's horrible. Jalen Guyton is the one that's stuck in my head. Somebody help me. Put the name in there. The receiver for the Chargers that I can't think of right now, who played really well. Yes, there is going to be a way for you to get into a future mock draft. I don't know if it'll be next week that we're going to do it, but we do plan to do it. Joshua Palmer, thank you. So they do have those pieces there. But just if you're all in here and you like these mock drafts, we did this last year. We're going to do it again this year. And Emo, what were we planning on? We had kind of a rough date in mind. Thank you, Andrea. We had kind of a rough date. Thank you, Parker. Thank you. We had kind of a next Wednesday is when we're planning it. So if you don't have a sleeper account, go get a sleeper account, right? The 15th. we're going to do a mock draft right here. You guys are going to draft, and I'm going to sit here and comment on your draft. And so be here. Watch my Twitter feed. Watch the @FF Diehards Twitter feed. We'll put out notifications and try to get you to sign up in advance of that. And we'll do a real-time draft. It'll be like a minute timer. And we'll kind of go from there. So, yes, we will be doing that, by the way, Parker. So next Wednesday, plan on it. Watch for it on my Twitter timeline during the day, Wednesday, and on the @FF Diehards Twitter timeline as well. So there's that. James Furry with a good old line. Why didn't either Detroit running back go earlier? Swift went in the second round in my league last year. Swift is not going to go in anyone's second round this year. Dennis Bennett doesn't need that kind of pressure. Yes, you do, Dennis. Yes, you do. I've got a draft on Thursday, so a mock on Wednesday would be nice. Good. Be here. Aloha. To get on to the Swift thing, I think the concern is, why did not Swift see more usage? Well, number one, he couldn't stay healthy. Number two, might this be a case? Jamal Williams, by the way, is a unrestricted free agent. My guess is he'll be back. He talked about that today, saying he wants to return. We'll see if he does. He had 17 touchdowns. He was pretty good. Had, 260-plus carries, 262 carries. He was the primary guy. I don't know that changes materially. I think Swift went in the second round in most all of my leagues, but I think people are not going to trust him. So here's what happens, though. People get dialed back on guys that I see value, and I think we will see value, and I may end up with DeAndre Swift. I would like to get him later than the fourth round where he went here, but I don't know. We'll see. Jamal Williams, I think people remain skeptical. People don't like to draft touchdown totals. Austin Eckler says, you draft those touchdown totals. It's not that hard. But anyway, that's the point. While we're still here, got about 10 minutes or so left. I was curious what some of the picks that stood out to you were in this draft. To me, I would have liked to get Jalen Hurts when we came back around. I would have taken Jalen Hurts with my next pick in round 4. And I would have taken Mixon in round 5, or whichever way. I ended up with Hawkinson. As I mentioned, he was the second highest per average score. I'm a Mark Andrews stan. I don't know. There's still a lot of things I don't know about this offense. They're going to have a new coordinator. They were probably planning to pass the ball more. Lamar Jackson will like that. But Lamar Jackson also wants to get paid. Are they going to have to franchise Lamar Jackson? If they do franchise Lamar Jackson, is he going to be around for OTAs? Is he going to be around as they try to install this offense and get it up to speed? I don't know. There's a lot of question marks there. There are no question marks with TJ Hawkinson. Very busy player. If you looked at the last 3 weeks leading up to, I want to say 14, 15, 16, or 15, 16, 17, he and Justin Jefferson were tied with 37 targets each. That was tied for the NFL lead. He has a role, right? They look for his way when they shut down Justin Jefferson, for sure, too. Like Matt Ryan, Williams does some every other year stuff. He did it last year. And like the destination. But I wanted to say, James, your point is correct. It's a great offensive line, a great passing attack. You would think the running backs would do better. The uncertainty is the usage. Tony Pollard over Dalvin Cook and Jones kind of surprises him. Aaron Jones, I would agree with that. I think Pollard, I want to say he finished inside the top 10 this year. What is it? Running back 9. Jones finished as 7. So he did finish ahead of Dalvin Cook, who finished 10. Dalvin Cook seems to be kind of getting to the diminishing returns point, so I get it. But I think if he's a value like this, I will be drafting him more. Najee Harris as well. Look at how far he fell. That's a surprise to me, seeing Najee Harris going in round 4. Irv Smith as a free agent likely opens up even more targets. I think Irv Smith moving on is because TJ Hawkinson became such a thing. So I'm with you there. I thought DeAndre Hopkins, it's interesting. We don't know a lot about his future. I like Jerry Jeudy a little bit. I consider Jerry Jeudy in the Amari Cooper spot. Sean Payton, apparently that guy knows something about offense. Can he fix Russell Wilson? Was Russell Wilson is he broken? Or was that more a function of maybe a coaching, bringing in a scheme that he wasn't an ideal fit for? Maybe some bad coaching decisions early in the season cost that offense in general. Injuries at some point were an issue for Russell Wilson as well. So betting on a rebound for Russell Wilson doesn't seem like the worst thing. You're going to get him dirt cheap in drafts if you want to bet on him. But on the pieces around him, that's not bad. So I thought Jerry Jeudy's a good value. I agree with you. I think that whole range of running backs in round 4 is fantastic. And Joe Mixon, Aaron Jones, Dalvin Cook, and Najee Harris for sure. I think DeAndre Swift's a little high. Daniel Jones is a very high pick. I will be talking with Howard Bender at some point about this. I've kind of been a Daniel Jones supporter. I think if you're drafting Daniel Jones, you're drafting the progress that Josh Allen made under Brian Dable, right? And I think we're expecting him to be back. Lamar Jackson going after him seems crazy. Charles Davis surprised Mark Andrews went so low despite the disappointing season. Well, I think, it was, look, I think the eyeball test, when I watch games, Baltimore, and you see Mark Andrews, he looks like the best player on the field. I mean, he does. He looks fantastic. I think the questions about the offense, but even at that, like his last year scoring total, his per game average, I think he was up around 17 points per game. That was an outlier from his normal. And he's always been good, right? He was more down around the 12 point, 13, 14 point range, which would be great. I would take that. Not sure about Pacheco, running back 19. I'm kind of with you there, Dennis. I'm not entirely sold on that, but I'm not entirely sold on J.K. Dobbins either. So that range. And Kamara, I thought was, look, you're hoping that he remains on the field, right? That there's no discipline, that he gets off on the charges that are against him. That case is progressing, by the way. He had a hearing 2 weeks ago. The last week of January. God, time flies. 4th pick likely to get usurped by another 4th round pick. Possible. Pacheco was a 7th round pick, right? Is that who we're talking about? Kyle Pitts, I think, interests me. Jeff Ratcliffe taking him as the, tight end 5? Parker wants to know, do I think tight end excluding Kelsey is worth 2 5th round picks? A tight end. Or should I stream wait for round 6 to 9? Excluding Kelsey, it don't seem very good. I think Hawkinson's fine. I think, if I was sure Brock Purdy was going to be the quarterback for the 49ers, I think Kittle's fine. I think you can make an argument for Andrews. After that, I think it gets a little dicey. I mean, so yeah. I mean, thank you, Andrea. I appreciate you coming. Yeah, I mean, so I think every year when we sit here and we talk, if I miss out on the elite tight ends, I'll just go down and get one of those other guys. Well, that doesn't always work out well. Although I do think the other guys, there are more of them. It seems like there's more. And if Evan Ingram remains with Jacksonville, be maybe happy playing him. Beyond that, I mean, Dalton Schultz, if he remains a Cowboy, don't know that he will. Pat Freiermuth seems like a reasonable play. That seems like the volume will be there. So, I mean, there are guys that I could live with, but I kind of want one of those higher end guys. I really do. So I think that'll be the direction I take in general. Drafting one, probably you'll probably have to draft them within the first 5 or 6 rounds. So, and if you wait, maybe you're just, you shotgunned a little bit and look for some young talent. I mean, Cole Kmet, expecting Justin Fields to progress as a passer. He was, we thought that leap was going to happen last year. It didn't. David Njoku seemed to be on that path, but injury slowed him down. So, I mean, there are guys out there that are intriguing. If you wait later, I would like to think Kyle Pitts is going to be one of those guys I could win until later. 6 rounds seemed a little early for me, based on his production. I mean, I don't know. Don't know a lot about what this offense is going to look like until we know what the quarterback's going to be. There's talk that the Falcons like Desmond Ridder. There's also talk that they might be open to change. I know I talked to a local radio personality in Atlanta, I want to say Saturday, and he brought Lamar Jackson into the conversation because that's been thrown out there, right? If that is a possible landing spot if the Ravens don't want to pay up. And by the way, they're said to be like $100 million apart on the guaranteed money. That's a lot, but they could again. I don't think Lamar Jackson is playing anywhere but Baltimore. It's a matter of how unhappy he is playing for Baltimore that is the question, right? Scott Kobe all in on Njoku again this year. I think for the price, I will be too. Anyway, anyone else out there jumping through? Where did Calvin Ridley go? I got to find Ridley there. first pick of the 4th round. How do y'all feel about Calvin Ridley? Haven't seen him for a couple of years, right? Or a year and a half, a year and more than a half. A lot of positive reporting for the people working out with him that he looks fantastic. But does that make Christian Kirk a greater value? Didn't add a lot of value in this draft. He still was 5th round pick, wide receiver 27. So that's interesting. Michael Pittman, pretty good value here in my mind, as well as Terry McLaurin. I thought all the guys going in this range, George Pickens, I don't know, that seems a little high to me. So anyway, way too early, says Scott Kobe. I'm not disagreeing with you. All right, everybody, we'll wrap it up for tonight. Interesting to see how these things play out. You can follow this if you go to my Twitter feed. I have a link up to this draft board so you can follow along live. Looking forward to no longer getting the quarterback I wanted. Jalen Hurts, so close, so close. Oh, painful. Anyway, I go 5-6 return for Ridley. Yeah, we'll see how, you know how it happens with players like this, though. The buzz gets, people start talking about it, and the chatter drives up the price. Anyway, we'll be back Saturday. We'll have some Super Bowl talk and see what else is going on around the league. Probably a lot of Super Bowl talk, though, and maybe look at some prop bets and things like that. See what you guys like, what you're interested in, entertain some of your thoughts. And then next Wednesday, Scott Kobe. And who else was it? Was it Charles that wanted to get in there? Mock drafts we'll do. So watch my Twitter feed, watch the @FFDiehards Twitter feed next week, and we'll put out links to sign up for the draft. If you don't have a sleeper account, get the sleeper account now so you can jump right into the draft without any delay, because sometimes they fill up really quick. All right, I'm Bob Harris. That's it. This has been the Football Diehards on the Hot Seat live stream. Appreciate y'all coming. Hit the like button. If you haven't hit the like button yet, hit the dislike button if you want. Hit the subscribe button if you want. Go to footballdiehards.com. Lots of content up there. Super Bowl-based content right now. DraftKings lineups. Get your captain set, people.